Okay, I will call to order the Rolesville Board of Commissioners work session. This is January 13, 2026. Just want to welcome everybody in attendance tonight. We've got a few people in the house, so appreciate everybody that's watching online and also that's here in person. Thank you for coming out. We got a few items in the work session on the agenda that we need to go over. We're starting a little bit late. We had a swearing in for the new fire chief. Good to have him on board. First fire chief in Rolesville. We just sworn in. I do want to get out of here by 9 o'clock. So that's our goal. I think I talked to some of the people presenting and stuff. So 9:30 at the latest, but I would like to shoot for 9 o'clock to get out of here. So everybody, let's rock and roll then with that. First thing I need is consideration agenda. So you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 items on there. Possible closed session. Do we still need a closed session, Mr. Attorney? Do we need a closed session?
That was the conversation just going on here. We will have an open session discussion about a capital improvements matter, and depending upon where the board's conversation goes, that will drive whether I recommend a closed session to talk about parts of that.
Okay, let's consider the agenda as written without a closed session then.
So moved.
I got a motion. Is there a second? Motion is second. Any further discussion? Not hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. Ayes do have it. Motion's approved. Thank you that. And also, we got one item we need to take care of in the work session, on one item to vote on, and that's consideration approval for the town campus owner representative. I think Amy and is going to maybe kick that off, finance director, and maybe Jessica tag team on that. So, are you ready?
Before Amy comes up, I wanted to take the opportunity, Commissioner Steen and I had a conversation about Toastmasters, and it just keep me off. If y'all have ever been in Toastmasters, I digress. So I want to take opportunity since we have 2 new staff members here, and I want to introduce them to you. We did meet our new fire chief. I want him to step forward for a second, Jason Deitch. And so he was just sworn in, and we're super excited to have him here. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to say hello to everyone, because I know that there are people that are watching here at home, and that'll be the first time they hear your voice.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, allow me to introduce myself. So the name's Jason Deitch. I'm 42 years old. I'm a Cancer. I like long walks on the beach, candlelit dinner. No, so a true honor to be your fire chief. I started my fire service journey actually as a junior member on the north side at a department, and then in 2005 I joined the Garner Fire Department. Worked all the ranks from firefighter all the way up to assistant chief until this position came up. Really excited to have it. I feel like a lot of the things that maybe we went through in Garner, they're happening in Rolesville, or they're about to happen here. And you know, I'm really excited. I'm a local guy too. I live pretty close to. I live in Wake Forest, but right kind of on the line. And just look forward to meeting and working with all y'all. I really love doing this. I love the fire department, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Chief. And then the other new addition to our team that I've been patiently waiting for is our new planning director. And so I just want to introduce Stephen Winsman to you all. The Winsman is W-E-N, even though all we're going to do is win no matter what with him as our planning director. Wow. I had to. I couldn't resist. But I don't want to give you a second to introduce yourself to the board, because planning matters are the things that sit at the forefront of a lot of your minds and a lot of our community's mind. This is one of the things that touches our community the most. All the development, all the different things. And so we've been patiently waiting, went through a very, very rigorous process as well. The search was over 7 months. And so we're super excited to have him here with us. And so just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself as well.
Sure, Steve Wensman.
I'm coming from the town of Smithfield, where I worked as planning director for 8 years. Prior to that, I lived in the Twin Cities in the winter there. I was the
Smithfield
planning
City.
director for the city of Lake Elmo, which was a first-ring suburb with growth, much like you're having. And Smithfield also had growth like you're having. So it's something I'm really used to, and hopefully there'll be lots of things that I can share and contribute to the town.
Thank you. Good to have
Look
you.
forward to working with you.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Thank you so much. And next week, our HR director starts, and so I look forward to introducing you to her, and that will seal us as having a fully staffed executive leadership team and not have any more vacancies at the department level. So we're super excited, and so just want to take advantage of the opportunity since they were here to introduce them to you all, and we'll return to our agenda as planned.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Amy.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Yep.
One thing, let me make a comment since we're getting out. As you can see, we are missing Commissioner Burnett. She's out of town, so she's not with us tonight, but I'm sure she's watching online, so she's in our thoughts. Go ahead.
Great. So as the mayor introduced, this is the one item tonight where we are requesting the board to consider action. This has to do with a conversation we started in November. It was talking about on our town campus project, which is the site, currently the site, the police station, and the main fire station. We were talking about engaging with an owner representative. This is somebody who acts as a project manager on this very large, very complex project, and bringing in some folks with experience in vertical capital projects. So just to remind you all, what we've chosen for this project is to use construction manager at risk of building. Okay, so it's a little different than the usual design, bid, build. This is a little bit different process. It takes more time on the front end to get the design right, but once the construction goes, it tends to be a little faster. This method it's like a three-legged stool. So there's 3 legs to the stool, which is the contractor, which Samet has been selected for that, the architect, ADW Architects, and then the owner, which is the town. So after an open and competitive process, we issued RFPs and received about 10 responses, and a team of town staff are recommending to you that we hire Turner and Townsend Heery to serve as the owner's representative on this project. This is a national firm. They have a local presence here in Raleigh, and they exhibited experience with multiple public projects, particularly here in North Carolina, including public safety facilities. So that was something important for us, given that the police and fire buildings are in this portion of the project. The other thing they exhibited was a good approach to communication, whether it's with staff, with you as the board, as the ultimate owner, and with the public as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Jessica Killian with Turner and Townsend Heery. I keep putting the and in the wrong place, and that's why I say it so slowly. But I'm going to ask her to come up here, and she's going to introduce herself to you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, especially on this night where we're introducing a fire chief. That's really exciting. So like Amy said, I just want to introduce the company a little bit. We've been doing project management work here in North Carolina for over 30 years. Our company, Turner & Townsend Heery, only focuses on public sector project management. So we do this kind of work for cities and K-12 and other public clients, both here in North Carolina and nationally. We have 10 project managers here in the Raleigh area and 18 in North Carolina. And then we've got about 450 project managers nationwide, again, doing this kind of work, working for cities and counties and towns on public safety complexes and other important things. So I love doing public sector work. I think it's really fun. I don't mind all the processes and procedures and all of that. I think it's fun. And so it's really exciting to do these kinds of projects that are going to be so transformative for you all. So again, my name's Jessica Killian. Myself and another project manager, Chuck Bostick, are going to be the main points of contact on this. So just my background a little bit, I've got a bachelor's degree in architectural engineering, so Eric and I are buddy engineers. but then a master's in construction management. I've been doing project management for over 20 years, working in the public sector for a little over 10 now. And really my passion is moving projects forward and getting things done. I know it can feel like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. It's not going to open until when? But there's a process behind that, and making sure that we're following that process, communicating to you all, bringing things to you all, answering questions, all of that is really, really important, and I love doing that sort of thing. So you will see me again as we go through. We've got a lot to talk about over the next few years. The other project manager I mentioned is Chuck Bostic. He's going to be more focused on the site infrastructure portion because that's moving forward so much more quickly. It's a big impact, obviously, to our project, also to Wake County. So he's going to be a little bit more focused on that. So Chuck has an environmental science degree. He's been doing project management for over 20 years, nearly 25 years. And he has a real significant interest in those kind of site infrastructure projects. So he's going to be a great asset to this project as well. So then just to wrap it up, just our approach to project management, and this is true for myself, for Chuck, and for the company as a whole, we really treat project management as a team approach. We are an advocate for city staff, for you all as the board, for the fire department, for the police department, making sure that what you all see is as important in this project is heard, is listened to, is remembered as we go through design. The architects and the contractors have very specific jobs to do, and we want to make sure that you all are getting what you need out of these projects. And we're staying within the budget, and we're meeting the schedule. Those are really, really important. We are very aware that this is part of, obviously, a larger financial plan, but also part of a phased development. This is a town campus, and this is phase 1. We need to make sure that there's money for phase 2 and anything else that needs to happen in the town. So paying attention to the budget is really important. And I know there's conversations tonight that are going to talk about some of that. So transparency, really, really critical to us. If you ever have any questions, please funnel them through Eric or Amy, or reach out to me directly. Like, we want to make sure that we get questions answered, both for you all, again, as the governing body, but also for the community. This is a lot of money. It's very impactful. We want to make sure people know what's going on. That rolls into collaboration. Again, working together with everyone, hearing what's going on. We're actually working myself with Samet and ADW on another fire station for the city of Durham right now. We're going to go into construction in a couple months. So we already know what to expect about what their deliverables look like, what their designs look like, all of that. So that helps a lot with that transition. Stakeholder engagement, I've kind of touched on this. Again, making sure that you all get the answers you need, and that we're ensuring that people get the questions asked and voices heard. Accountability, of course, is important. Budget, schedule, all of that. That we have a timeline. We were just talking with Davenport. Like, we've got a timeline for when this money needs to be spent, and so we need to make sure that we're accountable to that. And again, to the folks that are going to use the building. This is a 50-year facility or more. We have to be accountable to what they need and make good choices now. And then, again, I'll just round it up with just saying, we are your partner. We're your advocate. I'm excited. We got selected, I don't know, right after Thanksgiving, I guess. We interviewed right after Thanksgiving and got notified a week or two after that. And we immediately dug in. It was really important for us to not hold up the project just because we were needing to catch up with what had already gone on. And so we've already had a lot of meetings, had a lot of conversations, because this is really important to make sure that we integrate and we move forward and we keep it going, because this is really exciting for everything. Do you all have any questions for me about the delivery method, about what we do, anything that I can answer?
I'm just curious, and I do. And thank you so much,
Yeah.
Jessica, for coming. Excited that you're going to be a part of the journey. You mentioned the current project with Durham now. Do you have any that have been completed recently that we could just go be nosy and learn a little bit about some of the things that you guys have done there too?
With the city of Durham, or
Anywhere,
just in general?
in other municipalities, things that you've recently completed in the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, so a lot of our stuff is going on right now, actually. And so, we can talk there. We're working with Guilford County Schools on projects there. Obviously, like I said, the city of Durham, we've got YMCA, the Triangle work. So there's a lot of different types of projects that we're working on. But yeah, happy to facilitate that if you need.
And the question I have is that you mentioned about timely information, making sure we're on schedule. So how often will the board receive reports?
It's really going to be up to you all. And I think in conversation with staff, how much you all need. I wouldn't recommend that you get a report more often than monthly, because although we're moving a lot of things around, like every couple weeks isn't going to change too much. But absolutely, whenever you need a full presentation, we can figure that out. But again, whatever staff needs to needs, we'll support that.
Yeah, so we follow the cadence that we've landed on with the Main Street project. So every time we come before you in a business meeting, we'll have an update for that. If anything were to come up in between where we would need action items or change order and stuff like, or of that nature, then we'll bring it to in a work session. But in general, we'll just follow that same cadence of trying to keep you all as included in real time as possible. The good thing about the town campus project is it's not in the right of way. It's set off away from the road. And so a lot of the updates that you all will get will be very expected, and they won't necessarily be attached to urgent things that happen that are disrupting traffic, moving things around. So we're looking forward to what those pros that come along with doing this kind of project. But we'll definitely be updating you on a monthly basis on that at a very minimum for us formal reporting.
That's good, and that we'll be able to support the community engagement piece as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Another question? I do want to close with one comment, kind of a question, comment type thing. You talked a lot about accountability, and the two things, basically, big things for project management, budget and schedule. I think, reports, we need all that for sure. But what I would like, and I talked to Eric about this a few weeks ago, I would like as soon as you guys can, once we approve tonight and, you're on board, is to give us dates when the police department can move in their building, whether it's July 1 of 2028 or September the 5th of 2026. I don't, what that date is. I want to know the date that they can move in and the date the fire department move in. So we're going to be doing things that we need those dates, It's all stuff, kind of come with that. So we want the dates that they'll be moving in, and then we'll hold you accountable for that, because, you could get the project finished and then take months to get the CO or something.
Yeah.
I want the dates that you think that we can move them in.
Yeah, yeah.
Move them out of the building they're in and into the new building.
Yeah, and one of the things that's going to be really important is there's the contractors finishing, and there's you all being able to occupy. There's furniture to move in, there's equipment to move in, there's probably training for the building on both sides. So yeah, we'll make sure that we're very clear about what all of those after pieces are too, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're truly the project manager on this project
Yep.
to ensure that the contractors do their jobs and make sure that there's no breaks in the movement forward. And by doing that, we're going to be saving money, which helps offset the cost of hiring you guys.
Yeah.
And this is as much for the people watching as it is for us, but that's your job.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And, and a lot of times the reason that local governments bring in owners reps is because, we're here, this is our whole job to make sure that this project happens. And then to allow, Medat and other folks to do their jobs, because this is a big project. It's very complicated. But yeah, we feel that having an owner's rep, having a third party that's looking at all that just helps. Again, like I was mentioning before, remind the architect, no, we're not doing that. Or yes, we are doing that. Remind, staff that we need these answers now, because if we wait, we're not going to open on September 1st. It's going to be October. So we're really paying attention to all of that, because it's fun and it's needed. And so, yeah, it's important.
Thank you.
So I guess expand on Commissioner Paul's thing, because people are watching. So are we to expect you and your company, to fully engage with all the obstacles? And I'm not talking about obstacles, I'm talking about City of Raleigh, I'm talking about Duke Energy Company, I'm talking about all these obstacles that hinders a project.
Yeah.
And you know what they are.
I do.
You know what they are.
Yeah.
Or we expect you to be fully engaged in all those obstacles and make sure those obstacles don't hold the project up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of having that project manager, is because, the architect is focusing on the design and the obstacles to design. The contractor is focusing on construction and the obstacles there. But putting them all together, unless we have other things that are happening, like I said, furniture and other stuff that is sort of outside of those specific scopes. So yeah, absolutely. We need to get in front of Duke Energy. We were talking about this just the other day, as soon as possible, because we've got to underground power. That's going to take a while. That's going to cost money. We need to make sure that that's there. City of Raleigh is its own thing, and so again, getting in front of that and making sure that we're allowing for that in the schedule is really, really important. Ordering equipment early on, because some of this stuff has a really long lead time. So yeah, we are paying attention to all of those things, really acting for you all as the owner. That's our job. We don't do design. We don't do construction. But we know how all those get put together to make sure that we're paying attention to that. Will things happen? Absolutely. But it's our job to make sure that we get solutions to that and make sure that they don't impact the overall, goals of the project.
So it don't sound like you passed the buck.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And again, that's why you're hiring us. Like, we are accountable to what is happening in the project. If we've got bad news, we'll bring it to you and we'll talk about it and we'll figure out a solution. But if we have to have hard conversations with the architect, with the contractor, with other folks, that's our job. That's what we do. I didn't go into engineering thinking that I was going to have to deal with people as much as I do, but I love this stuff. And so, yeah, these are hard projects. But again, you've got a great team already in your design and contractor, you really do. And so this kind of rounds all that out, and I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
Thank you.
So the way that an owner's representative was once explained to me, they said it's like you have a seat at every single table, and they're the expert at that table for your organization.
Yeah.
Correct? So they're going to be their hands in everything, from what I understand.
That's good.
And if I don't know the answer, I'll find it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate you
absolutely.
coming
Thank
out
you so
tonight.
much.
Amy, you got any closing?
No, sir. Just going to make it easier. If you do desire to proceed with the action before you tonight, just wanted to put that out there. There was still the copy of the contract that's in your packet was an earlier version. The legal counsel has been working through some remaining issues. That contract is substantially what they started with. So it's some smaller things. I don't know if Dave needs to weigh in there or not, but that's why the motion would authorize the manager to sign, subject to the town attorney's final review.
Okay. So, so unless there's opposition from the board, I will call for question to action or for consideration of this matter.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Turner and Townsend Heery for owner's representative services for the town center project, subject to the town attorney review.
Okay, got a motion second.
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion?
Not this
Not
time.
hearing it. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. Ayes do have it. Thank you, board. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Nice to meet you. Appreciate that. We'll be looking forward to you providing the next step information to us. So thank you. Next item is capital improvement project updates, the CIP updates. I think Eric has sent out earlier an email, which you do not have to review extensively, because I think he's going to provide some updates around that email.
Yes, so I'll let them come forward. They'll be making. I'll allow them to come forward, but as a. So since it's a CIP meeting, what I wanted to do before we dive into the CIP portfolio is that we just kind of operated kind of like 40,000 feet to give y'all rapid fire updates on the active CIP projects. You just received an update on what is the most significant step that we've made with the town campus or the municipal complex project. And what we'll do is my dad will come first and he'll give some rapid fire updates on those general town CIP projects, one of them being the Main Street project and others. And then Parks and Recreation will give updates on the farm and those that may be more specific to Parks and Recreation infrastructure. And so I'll pass it to them, and we'll just allow you all to ask any questions. What the mayor mentioned was a memo that I sent. It has a more written out version of the updates. For the benefit of the public, that memo that I provided to you all has been added to the agenda packet as well, so that the community can read those as well.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Town Council.
And to turn on the screen.
Mr. Attorney, Manager. Screen. Okay. So for the town campus, the most update, we have Turner for our owner representative, and we already have ADW as our architect. We have Summit as our construction management at risk. For the site development, we almost end the final stage for the design and also for the cost estimate. And like expecting to start on April on the site work. For the police department, we already in the last stage 2 from the development design and the cost estimate, and fire station is the same. Post development design is almost ready. The negotiation now is like for the cost estimate for post items. As we said, for expecting a start on April for site work, and I think maybe we could start with helping with Turner with us. So, but the estimated time now is April. For Main Street project, the most update now, we work in a street light with like 2 companies, with Duke Energy and Wake Electric. For landscape, we estimate to start for springtime, since like the cold now weather. And the final paving is called like for estimate in March 2026 too. And last project is Granite Falls Boulevard resurfacing. The project is almost done. We have some short notes, like manhole top covers, some edges of the road, and we're working to finalizing this list soon. Any question for these 3 projects? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with Parks and Rec, right now we're talking about the Farm 1B, the event center. Right now we are in the design phase with ADW right now to help design the master plan for the farm. The HUD Main Street Park enhancement. Right now we have received environmental reviews. We got a couple of more things to check off on our list. And now we are also starting to start going back out and reacquiring our bids for the project so that we can follow our best practice policy that we use here for the town as far as our purchasing policies. So we're reaching out to all of our vendors and actually I'm getting the 3 bids so we can put the stuff out to bid and bring it in so we can start, hopefully by this spring, we can start some of the enhancement projects for the Main Street Park. And the remaining CIP projects in Parks and Recreation, the Farm 1A, the entrance, as we all know, the entrance with the driveway and the parking lot behind, that has been completed. Right now, we are working with DOT to get a easement so that we can remove that DOT fencing along the front and actually install our own fencing for that part. But the project itself is completed. We just want to put the fencing up. Millbridge Amphitheater. As we all know, that project is also completed. We are waiting to receive the funding back from the state. We have submitted all our invoices and billing. We're just waiting to receive our reimbursement for that grant that we applied for with this one. But that project is complete as well. Sanford Creek Playground. We are working with the vendor right now. We have the vendor selected. We are going to go out and find some more vendors so we can use our purchasing policies. We have to get 3 vendors. We only had 2 that the school had provided, so we had to get another one. We're doing that now, but we are looking to start on fixing the playground over at Sanford Creek probably in the next couple of months. So once we get a vendor selected, and we will go and do the installation of the matting for the playground. And the last piece that we have for our CIP, Parks and Rec, is the Granite Acres Greenway. We are still waiting on the, what's the word we use?
Easement acquisition.
Yeah, the easement acquisition and the whole litigation piece with that Granite Acres Greenway with that grant that we have for that as well. So we're just waiting for that part to be done. And once that gets done, we'll know how to proceed as far as the Granite Acres Greenway.
Okay.
All right, and then the last project we have now that I'm officially in Public Works is the Town Hall HVAC renovation. So This building is older, the HVAC units are older. We've been replacing them as needed over the past few years as they start to go. There's 9 total. We have replaced 6 so far. There's still 3 that are remaining that need to be replaced. And we're just going to be kind of monitoring those, and when they need to be replaced, we will replace them. I think.
Okay, may I ask 2 questions? Okay, so Main Street Park enhancements, can I have an example?
Oh, they're gonna bring on, we have on Wi-Fi, cameras, painting the
gazebo, the shelters.
Yeah, the gazebo, the shelter's gonna be rebuilt, the parking lot is gonna be restriped.
Wait, the shelter's gonna be rebuilt, okay, okay, okay.
Resurfacing putting in pour-and-play surfacing for the newer playground, the one like right behind the bathrooms,
Okay,
so that rubberized surfacing.
all right, thank you for that. And then my second question is, Sanford Creek Parkway, Sanford Creek Park, that is Wake County School.
Yes.
So why are we replacing that, or,
So with our joint use agreement, that we have with the Wake County Schools, we have to, get the stuff, get the equipment, get it paid for first, and then they will in turn reimburse us back half
Oh,
of what
okay.
it costs.
okay. All right, thank you.
You said half?
Yes,
We have to pay for everything up front?
yes, sir. We have to pay for everything up front, and then they'll come back in.
That's it for me.
And that's so we can use the ball fields and what have you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
No question.
Yeah, and I know we got some complaints about the fencing being inadequate for kids to crawl under, get in this road out there. That's part of that, right?
The fencing was actually replaced last year.
Okay.
So that has been, we have all new fencing out there.
Okay.
So we did have that complaint last year, but we took care of that.
Good. That's the only big complaint I've heard from Sanford Creek, is that fencing was dangerous.
Yes, we actually cut all the branches and trees that was growing through it, that was making it do that. So once we cut that out and had it replaced, we haven't had no more problems.
Any other question? Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Eric, any follow-up?
No other follow-ups, only one point of clarification. So just a reminder with the Main Street Park renovations, that money for those repairs comes via a grant from the community project funding, which was the allocation that we received through Congresswoman Deborah Ross. And so we received 2 grants. One of them was for Main Street Park. The other was to help with the site development for the library. And we partnered with Wake County on both of those applications. And so the need to go back and get updated quotes for the vendors, we want to make sure we adhere to that process to the T to ensure that we get the reimbursement that we committed, that we were promised with that. And so the shelf life for that funding is 3 years, but we definitely anticipate getting that done in plenty with time to spare. But just wanted to clarify that, and also just send the thanks to Congresswoman Deborah Ross again for making that happen for us. Ready?
Ready for the next item, Mayor?
Yeah, be fine.
For the steak and potatoes of the night.
That's right. So that was the appetizer, and then we had soup, and now we're getting to the entree. So the next item is the 5-year capital improvement plan financial model update. So about a year ago, it was March, so it's not quite a year ago, we shared with you your latest update, right? This has been an ongoing, we've been doing updates every year. This was the latest update from March of 2025, the model that we looked at. Now that model really, even though we had these other projects on here, that model really focused on these projects that are highlighted in the red circle, or figure, not circle, which was the town campus and the activation of the farm. Now, so that's where the notes down here at the bottom. That model was limited to those projects. It maximized the revenues that were available. Okay? So one of the things with that, I'm just going to plant a seed. Mitch will be talking about some more, and I'll be talking about some more later. Maximizing the revenues available means it maximized fund balance, right, to bring so that we could use all of the fund balance that is in excess of what your minimum policy is. Okay? And it was based on assumptions of continued growth. And those growth assumptions were built into the revenue projections. So it assumed growth, and it used the revenues from the growth. Okay? That analysis, I don't know if you recall, about a year ago, we were really looking more at that main fire station. We had to tinker with that number a little bit to get that right size it so that we could say we can do this with no additional revenue resources needed. Okay? So that's where we were a year ago. Things change, right, from year to year. Our revenue situation has changed a little bit. Expenditures have changed. We're still trying to, as we've talked with Ms. Killian here and some of these other project updates, we're still trying to get the final figures on some of these town campus projects as we're getting into them. That's where I really hope having that owner's rep here will help us nail that down and come up with a solid budget for those projects. We have different faces at the table. There's somebody new at this table who wasn't here before. And some of you may have changed your thoughts or priorities based on feedback from the public or your observations of the community. And so because of those changes that occur from year to year, it's important to come back to this model, update it, and then see where we are. The goals with this conversation tonight, and this is just things to think about. There's not going to be resolutions to this tonight. It's the beginning of a conversation for the next few months. But the goals here are to reaffirm that the CIP reflects your priorities. And then the other interest in having this is to prepare for the debt issuances we proceed with this town campus, the site, the police station, the fire station. These are all in design now. And so it's sort of that last check-in before we proceed with actually moving ahead with the activities to issue the debt for those facilities. Okay? So it's just a good little gut check, make sure everything's working, not working, see how things fall out. So with all of that, we haven't handed those out yet, have we? So I'll do that, Mitch, while I enter you. So we have Mitch Bergoglio here from Davenport Public Finance, who run these models for us, and he's here to give you an update on what the results of that is. So while he's up here saying hello, I will pass out.
Thank you, Amy. And Mr. Mayor, members, thank you all for having me back again this evening. Mr. Mayor, I was watching the clock. 9:30 is a definite, but be careful. It's only 7:20. So, as Amy passes these out, I wanted y'all to have hard copies as well. Some of the numbers are going to be small on the screen. We've done some bigger pages for you. Hopefully, they're a little more legible for you there. And I'll go through this at a good pace, but please stop me along the way as you have questions. Love to make the conversation interactive. Don't feel like you gotta wait until the end and remember any specific question you had. And as Amy said, we are starting to prepare for the financing of the town campus. There will be actions that we will come to you with this spring before the end of this fiscal year for you all to consider moving forward on those financing. So wanted to give you a good update here, answer any questions, and make sure we're still on track, that when we go out with the financing, we structure that consistent with what you all are expecting. Oh. Finance and IT director. Okay, here we go. So as we dive in here, just kind of refresher and for some and new to others. But when we start to think about funding a CIP, and in particular this year, getting ready for the first couple financings associated with town campus, we want to make sure that you all are in a position to access the capital markets. And I like to talk about it like this, something that I'm familiar with, I think y'all are probably familiar with, buying a home or buying a car. You first need to understand, can I get a loan if I'm going to take out a loan to buy that house or to buy a car? Am I going to be able to get a loan? You go to your bank and they're going to pull your credit score. And they're going to look at your credit score and say, based upon that credit score, we are or are not willing to lend you the money to buy that house or buy that car. Kind of very similar in the municipal lending world. But instead of a credit score, they look at a credit rating. There are national credit rating agencies that issue credit ratings for cities and towns like yourself. But you only need those for specific types of financings. You all in the past have gone directly to banks, and you do not need a national credit rating to get a loan from a bank. They have their own internal process, internal ratings that they establish to determine whether they will lend you the money and at what interest rate they'll lend you that money. What we've learned over the years from talking to these banks is they look at things very similar to these national credit rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. And so we use these national credit ratings as a guide for how the banks will also evaluate your credit rating. So as we go through this presentation tonight, we're going to look at a series of peer comparatives. How do you stack up to other cities and towns that are rated? And we're going to look at the highest credit rating, AAA, the second highest, AA, and the next highest, single A. And we'll do that for both all cities and towns nationally as well as here in North Carolina. And for a little perspective, in the bottom right corner, you can see where cities and towns in North Carolina stack up within this credit rating scale. And I think that's kind of helpful perspective for you all to be thinking about. And a lot of your peers here in the county fall into that AAA and AA rated categories. We're very blessed in North Carolina to have strongly rated communities, and in Wake County in particular, very strongly rated communities. So that bodes well for you all in terms of access to the credit markets at attractive interest rates. And you'll see as we go through here, you have managed yourselves very well, prepared very well to go out and borrow this type of money. One of the things that is important in establishing that credit is your financial performance. And so wanted to provide just a quick overview of your historical financial performance over the last 5 years, focusing in on the general fund here. The top left graph is just looking at your general fund revenues and your general fund expenditures. And this is really important, maintaining a structurally balanced budget. Your annual revenues coming in are covering your annual expenses, meaning you're able to grow or maintain your fund balance. And these two charts demonstrate that you've done a very nice job of managing yourselves financially over the last 5 years. You have maintained that structurally balanced budget. In the top chart, top left chart, that gold line of revenues is covering the green bars, which are your expenses. The gray bars layered on top of that are the transfers that you all have been able to make to either fund capital projects or set aside to fund these capital projects that we're talking about this evening. So y'all have done a very nice job of maintaining that structurally balanced budget, and in the bottom graph, being able to set dollars aside within your fund balance largely to go towards funding this capital. Later this evening, Amy's going to talk about some policies, some financial policies. That is something that we've talked about with you all over the years, and as you're going to enter into this phase of financing the town campus and the park project potentially, looking to consider adopting those financial policies. Amy will be presenting those later this evening. One policy that you have had and have established over the years is the general fund balance policy. And that is to maintain a unassigned fund balance. Unassigned is basically your free fund balance, your rainy day funds that can be spent on for any lawful purpose. And to maintain those rainy day funds, unassigned fund balance at 33% of general fund expenditures. So think about it, if revenues shut off, you could operate the town for a third of a year, right, on 33% of fund balance. Additionally, as part of that policy, you have looked at limiting the use of funds over the 33% to one-time purposes, right? Singular purposes, not ongoing or recurring expenses. And that's important. Kind of think back what we talked about to those general fund revenues versus expenses, maintaining a structurally balanced budget. If you use fund balance to, say, cover salary increases or cover operations at a new facility, you use that fund balance, it's gone. It's a one-time revenue source, right? You've got excess over your policy, you budget it, you use it. Well, the next year it's not available, but those expenses are recurring. They happen every year, right? So that would mean you don't have that structurally balanced budget. So you've done a nice job in your policy of limiting those expenses to one-time purposes, or the use of that fund balance to one-time purposes. And as part of that, the policy also stipulates that anything over the 33% gets transferred to the capital reserve. Another protection, right, to be able to say those dollars are being spent for one-time purposes. And been following that policy, have been able to establish funds within the capital reserve that are going to be helpful to funding these capital projects as we go forward. For a little bit of perspective on that 33% level, the chart on the top right is the first of these peer comparatives. I'll explain it here. We'll see a couple more. I'll explain it here. They're all set up the same way. You all's policy for unassigned fund balance as a percent of expenditures is shown in gold at the top of the graph. The first bar is the fiscal year 2025 results, and the second line is the fiscal year 2024 results. You improved from fiscal year 24 to 25. The middle section there, the light green bars, are the national medians for the AAA rating category, that highest rated category, then AA, then single A, the second highest and the next highest. Again, this is the median, right? So half of the data points are lower, half the data points are higher. This is kind of the midpoint for the national rated cities and towns. And then the same data for North Carolina in the dark green bars. There's no North Carolina cities and towns in that single A category. They're all AAA or AA. And we've superimposed on top of that these blue lines that show you the minimum data point and the maximum data point. So you get a sense of the range of where people fall within North Carolina as well. And so you all are in a very good position above all of these medians and on the upper end of the range within North Carolina. But as you'll see as we go through tonight, there is a plan to utilize that as part of funding these capital projects. And if you do utilize those funds and bring your policy down to where you're left with that 33%, then you still stack up nicely. That's the red line on top is your 33% policy. You still stack up nicely with all these medians, and you're kind of right in the middle of the range of the North Carolina cities and towns. As I mentioned before, with your policy, you do transfer the excess over 33% to the capital reserve. Remember, these are audited numbers, so it's a one day on June 30th. This is the dollar amount you have. You don't transfer those funds until after you have your audit. You quantify what the excess is. You transfer the funds the next year.
The next year or next?
The next fiscal year. So, for example, Fiscal year 25, just got your audit. In fiscal year 26, the excess will be transferred. Okay? Another important part of the credit process and our financial plan going forward is your property tax base overview, right? You all have been blessed with a very rapidly growing tax base, and we're going to take that into account, as Amy said, in the projections. I know, Mr. Mayor, this is something that you've stressed over the years of this planning process, and that has been built in. Over the last 10 years or so, excluding revaluation, right? Revaluation is a one-time event. We're kind of focused on natural tax base growth. Excluding revaluation years, you all have grown it at almost 9% a year, 8.9% a year. And so for planning purposes, we are going to assume that from fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 30, essentially the next 4 to 5 years, you're going to continue to grow at that 8%. And as your tax base grows, right, the dollar growth isn't as large of a percentage. So we're going to be a little conservative and drop it down to 6% for fiscal years 2031 through 2033. And then for fiscal 34 and beyond, we're going to revert back to more of a CPI, average CPI inflationary growth of 3% thereafter. So, you know, through fiscal year 33, acknowledging the rapid growth, factoring that in, and then for sort of the longer term projections going to more of an inflationary growth rate.
Yeah, just for clarity purposes, you're planning up to 33, but we evaluate it every year, and if it doesn't look like it's right next year, then that changes. We change it. We redo it every year.
Yes, sir.
We're
Absolutely.
just planning for 33. It doesn't mean that we're stuck to do that to 33.
Just like your CIP, evaluate the financial plan every year, and things are going to change and evolve, and we factor that in and measure the impact of that. Yes, sir.
I mean, we do it annually.
Annually, yes, sir. Okay. So the other piece that I want to kind of use to set up this conversation, and another important piece of the credit, is your outstanding debt. And we're looking at all of your outstanding debt at this point is tax-supported debt. It's all general fund type debt. And we've broken it out into a couple of categories here, and this is going to be important as we move forward. The first category is we're calling, you know, the town government or the general fund debt that is paid from that capital savings fund that you all have established. The dollars that are going to capital savings, dollars that are already budgeted within your general fund. That is about $5.8 million currently outstanding. We have two additional categories: debt that is paid from the Parks and Rec impact fees, right? So Parks and Recreation, the park impact fees, those fees are restricted for use on park capital projects, park projects, right? So we can't pay general fund town campus debt with park impact fees. So we need to track those separately. We can only spend park impact fees on qualifying projects. Similarly, for the streets and sidewalks, the street impact fees can only be spent on those type of projects. You currently have no debt outstanding that is supported by those street impact fees. In the aggregate, about $6.5 million of total debt outstanding. That is all paying off by fiscal year 2043. These are numbers, good to understand, but also want to give you some perspective on what that means for your debt load that you're carrying as a town, right? Every town is different sizes. So we're gonna show you a few debt ratios, and we kind of look at this as your debt capacity within these ratios, measuring your debt as a percentage of your tax base, as a percentage of your budget. What is your carrying cost or your carrying load of the debt outstanding? One of the key ratios we look at is shown on the right-hand side of this page. This is the 10-year payout ratio. The percentage of your debt outstanding that you're repaying over the first 10 years. So this fiscal year that we're in, you are this fiscal year through the next 10 years, you are repaying 72% of your principal outstanding. So you'll have 72% of your debt retired over the next 10 years starting from this year, and you can see that increases over time as we get closer to final maturity. The policies that Amy is going to present tonight will recommend a financial policy on this ratio, the 10-year payout ratio. And this is really a protection that you're repaying your debt responsibly. You're not taking on debt and then not repaying it for a long period of time. You're paying down the principal every year in a responsible fashion. The policy recommendation is a minimum payout ratio of 50%. So you're going to repay half of your debt over the first 10 years at any given point in time. That's a very typical policy ratio. It will be attractive for lenders and rating agencies if you ever do need to get a national credit rating. And currently, you're sitting, again, at that 72%. So you're above that policy limitation at this point, and we'll look at how that is going to evolve as you finance, if you choose to finance some of these capital projects going forward. Second ratio is debt to assessed value. So debt is a percentage of your tax base. Property tax is your largest revenue source as a town, and so your tax base is a good metric for your debt load outstanding. You are going to see a proposed policy this evening not to exceed 2.5% debt to assessed value. You're currently sitting at 0.25%. So you're in very good shape under this ratio right now, and you'll see how that evolves as we issue the new debt going forward. We do have a peer comparative for this ratio. Lower is better here. Lower amount of debt as a percentage of your tax base, and you can see you're lower than all of these medians currently. So you're in good shape here. We would say you have debt capacity under this ratio. Final ratio is debt service to expenditures that we're going to look at. Your debt service is a percentage of your annual budget. This is a measure of your debt load outstanding. It's also a measure of your budgetary flexibility, right? Because debt service, you can't furlough debt service, you can't lay it off, you can't, turn the lights off early and save on energy. Your debt service payment is a fixed amount. You know you're going to have to pay it every year. Currently, you're sitting at about 5.7%. And this is a ratio that you'll see is going to get some pressure as you take on this new debt. So the policy recommendation here is to monitor this annually, to review it annually, and ultimately look to adopt a formal policy establishing a targeted range of 15 to 20%. Depending upon how this plan unfolds, you may be outside of that range to start, and we'll see that here shortly. So the thought is to track it annually, monitor it, and then at a future date, establish a policy on that. You can see where the medians in the bottom show up here. Just under 10% is the average median, although you can see in North Carolina there's folks as high as almost 25% that are rated AAA, the highest of the highest rating, right? It's not uncommon for towns like yourself who are growing to have to invest in infrastructure and then grow into that infrastructure within your budget over time. So that is one of the reasons why we're recommending to monitor this annually and then to institute a policy as that growth comes to pass. Okay, so within those key ratios, we would say you have debt capacity. It's reasonable for y'all to be considering debt issuance within these key ratios to fund future capital projects. The related concept, other side of the coin, is affordability, right? Do you have the room within your budget? Do you have the revenues to pay for it? And that's what we've been working with over the last couple of years, is trying to maximize those revenues to fund these capital projects. So page 12 gives you an overview. You all have, as I mentioned earlier, done a really nice job of preparing to fund these capital projects. And over the years, you all have carved out revenue sources to support the debt payments for these capital projects into the future. The first series of bullets are kind of the annual ongoing revenues and fund balances that are dedicated. The first source is general fund budgeted debt service. You have two pieces of debt outstanding, that $5.8 million that are paid from the general fund. The current dollars dedicated to pay that debt service are just over $700,000. That is included in your current budget. You are paying for those from current year revenues. So the idea is you can continue setting aside that $705,000 without a budget impact. So those are dollars, $705,000 will be set aside every year. The second revenue source, and you all are very thoughtful in putting this in place ahead of time, was the pennies dedicated to the capital savings fund. Currently 9.6 pennies dedicated to that capital savings fund, setting aside dollars, setting aside tax rate in anticipation of these projects. That is currently in place and has been in place, and you've been able to set aside a little over $5 million already to go towards this plan. So we're going to use those dollars, as Amy said, the dollars that you've set aside already and the future dollars generated from the 9.6 cents. By doing the pennies dedicated, that's also going to allow you to take advantage of the growth in the tax base. As your tax base grows, the value generated from that number of pennies increases over time. And we're factoring that in. Remember those growth rates that we talked about tax base. We're going to revisit it every year, like the mayor said, because if you grow more slowly, that'll have a negative impact on the plan. If you grow more quickly, that'll have a positive impact on the plan. So that's one of the reasons why we need to continue tracking this every year. The final two are those park impact fees and street impact fees that I mentioned earlier. Again, restricted for specific types of capital projects, but there is an annual revenue source that is subject to development, right? That is an unknown revenue source. We have assumed, in conjunction with staff, $500,000 a year of annual revenue. I think that's the lower end of what you've received over the years, but given that this is an unknown, can be a volatile revenue source, we don't want to be too aggressive in that assumption because we are planning to spend the dollars in the future.
How many units is that? How many houses is that?
I think we'd have to get back to you on that one. We're also assuming that the fund balance that's been built up in those impact fee from those impact fee revenues will also be available to help support the plan. Finally, there's some other revenues at the bottom of this page that we're going to be counting on. Your fund balance policy, right? Everything over 33% gets transferred to that capital savings fund. In fiscal 25, that amount is anticipated to be $300,000 at the beginning of the fiscal year. And maybe saying, well, that bar was a lot higher. Why is it only $300,000? Well, I think Amy's going to walk through this, but some of the steps you all have taken to fund current capital projects that are ongoing, some of those dollars have already been appropriated. But the hope is, goal, plan, hope for some, is that those dollars will be able to be reimbursed to the capital savings fund as projects come to completion. That's that next bullet, the Main Street LAP reimbursement. This is not guaranteed, but there are conversations going on about a reimbursement of the $2.3 million that has been appropriated from Campo in the city of Raleigh for that Main Street project. And so that needs to be finalized, but we are assuming that that is reimbursed. So that's a key assumption in this plan. The second piece is the reimbursement of these preliminary town campus projects. So the cost for design that have been appropriated, set aside to fund the design for the site, the fire, the police. Those dollars have been carved out of capital savings and set aside. However, when we go to issue the financing to pay for the construction of the contract, we can also reimburse those preliminary costs and put that money back into fund balance at the same time. Finally, on the fire project, you all have partnered with Wake County over the years. There is a cost share. The assumption is that Wake County will cover 30% of the annual debt service payment on that fire station project.
Is that fixed for the life of the project?
That is the assumption. I think it's still needs to be fine-tuned, locked in with Wake County, but the assumption is 30% of the annual payments through the final maturity of the debt would be covered by Wake County.
For the life of the project, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, life of the project, or in this case, the life of the debt for the project.
Right.
Okay? So, again, y'all have done a lot of work here on the front end. So now we're just coming to fruition, looking to finance these projects. So we're going to, utilizing these revenues, we're going to measure the debt affordability, right? How do these revenues compare against the projected costs? This is where it gets really small, but we did, in your handout, you have a pull-out page that hopefully is a little bit bigger for you all. And I'll take a moment here to just kind of orient you to this page or remind you, as some of you have studied these over the years. But big picture, we're doing this all by fiscal year in column A. And we are currently just modeling the existing debt outstanding. So column B is that existing debt paid from the general fund. That's the $705,000 in fiscal 27. And then column F is the debt service, principal and interest that is paid from the park impact fees. And you can see that existing park debt pays off in fiscal year 28. So that revenue source stops currently after fiscal year 28. When that debt is paid off, we cannot use it to fund the general town projects. That's totaled up in column H. So those are your total requirements. Then we have the revenues that we just talked through in columns I through P, total revenues available. We do not have column O, the reimbursement for the current projects. We have not included that yet, largely because over half of that is subject to doing the financing, subject to funding these capital projects. So your total revenues available are in column P. Column Q just shows the annual difference between those revenues and expenses. That's your annual surplus. Those are your annual dollars that will be available to go towards these capital projects we're going to look to fund. And then column R is tracking that capital savings balance, right? It's starting out at about $6 million currently. That is going to evolve over time, right? We're showing it growing every year because we have those surpluses, but once we start to fund these projects, we're going to be utilizing. But you are starting from a position of strength here with the steps you've taken already leading up to these projects. You have debt capacity, you have debt affordability. The question is going to be, with where we are with the projects that you're looking at, is that sufficient to cover the annual payments on these projects? We are tracking, and this is new, we've always been looking at it, but felt like it was helpful to break this out and show it to you. We are tracking all of the street impact fees and the balance in that street impact fee fund. So to the extent we don't utilize all of these funds for the current plan, you can see the remainder that's available to fund capital. Same thing for the parks debt as well. So 3 pages here. We're going to focus on the first big one, but it's also important to understand where you are with the other restricted revenues that aren't being utilized in the big plan as well.
So I think one thing that I'm not getting clear, you probably make it really clear for me. I always thought this existing capital tax savings fund in 9 cents was building up so that one day we could convert it into debt retirement, pay off debt retirement. But it looks like in your chart, you're proposing to keep that mentality going and pay off debt retirement. How?
So that is going to be used to go towards the payments on the debt that's being issued to insulate your annual general fund revenues. So you don't have to carve off new general fund revenues to pay for the debt. You've already got that carved out. And what you'll see here in a moment as we go look to funding these capital projects, at the very beginning of the plan, your debt is going to increase, right? There's going to be a spike in your annual debt payments. And that fund balance is going to help cover you through the spike in that debt service, so we don't need to raise revenues to fund a couple of years at the beginning.
I think I was saying the same thing. So you're just keeping in the chart, you're just keeping the 9% in the chart to at least to 2052, but you're using that 9% for debt retirement.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got you. We'll probably see that better later on.
Yes, sir. Okay, so that was a really long setup to get to what you really want to know. So we're going to look at the capital projects that are under consideration here. And we've broken this out into two scenarios. The first scenario is going to fund those projects that Amy's oblong circle highlighted, the ones that were focused on last year. And that is largely the town campus, the site development, police, fire, town hall, and then the farm park. We're currently modeling the 1B event center. The total of those 5 projects is currently $69.5 million. Now that estimate, and we've got this noted down below, Amy's going to correct me if I say this wrong, that is the current design and all alternatives. So this is trying to get to the higher end of the potential cost of these projects, higher than what was anticipated in the budget last year. Things evolve and alternatives come up, inflation and construction costs, et cetera. This is higher than your current budget. Those are all preliminary. Those are looking to be finalized. When you get the GMP from Samet, your construction manager at risk, is when those costs will be finalized. Your decisions in the design process can impact these costs as well. But we've tried to err on the higher end for these costs. That's the capital cost of the facilities. Over the years, we've also talked about and acknowledged that when these facilities come online, there will be the other side of the house, the operating side of the house, that will be impacted. We don't know exactly what those operating costs will be, but staff has been planning and setting aside allocating dollars from these dedicated revenues to offset the cost of the operations. Those allocations are highlighted in column E. So you're getting to a total for these 5 projects of allocation for operating costs of $890,000. Those are assumed to come online when we're estimating the projects will be completed. So for the first part of town campus, fire and police, assuming those operating costs start in fiscal year 28, and then for the town hall and the farm park, assuming those operating costs start in fiscal year 2030. Again, the start years will be subject to refinement as we get into the final phases of the design and bidding, get into construction, and get that date you're looking for, Mr. Mayor. When do we move in? But trying to allocate dollars to offset the impact to the operator. For scenario 2, we're going to add on a few other projects that you all have talked about: Granite Falls, downtown parking, some additional land purchase, and the Veterans Memorial. These projects are assumed to be cash funded. And I'll give you a preview. Essentially, as you issue the debt to fund the town campus projects in the first phase of the farm, you're really kind of capping out that debt capacity. So Anything over and above that, we're looking at needing to be a cash-funded project, but again, would revisit that annually, and depending upon how things evolve, the plan could evolve from there. Okay? So, what does this look like? Well, scenario one is, again, just the farm park and town campus. The top left graph shows you your debt service, estimated debt service payments. And the dark green bar at the bottom is your existing debt service, right? So you can see taking on 69 million of additional debt. Obviously, when you have 5.8 million of debt outstanding, there is a significant change in your annual debt service budget. Projecting it's going to go up to north of 7.5 million per year from what is currently about $1 million. And that'll come on phased over several years as these projects get underway till it caps out there in fiscal year 2029. And then it starts declining from there. We're assuming that the debt is issued over a 20-year term. That is about the longest the LGC, Local Government Commission, who approves all town debt, that's about the longest they like to approve for this type of governmental project. We're also assuming a level principal payback, right? So you're paying the same amount of principal back every year. Good example is if you take on $20 million of debt, you pay it back over 20 years, you pay back $1 million of principal every year, plus interest on top of that. And that does two things. First off, it allows you to keep that 50% payout ratio, right? So, and the second thing it does is it creates this declining debt service structure, right? Because if you have annual level principal payments, you're paying interest on top of that. As you retire your principal, your interest payments go down, right? So that's going to allow you to kind of reduce your annual payments over time. It also gives you some room in the future should there be additional capital projects you'd like to consider. And we're assuming a 5% interest rate for all of these financings. In the current market, probably more in the 4 to 4.5% range. But, want to be conservative. Some of these projects aren't being, some of this debt we're not looking to issue until, the fiscal year 2028, several years from now. So got to have a little bit of cushion in there from the current market. We think that's a very reasonable planning rate to be using at this point. Okay? Revisit those debt ratios and proposed policies. What you'll see is you're basically taking on 69 million all new debt, essentially, at that level principal over 20 years. So you're right at that 50% payout ratio, right in line with that proposed policy. Debt to assessed value gets to over 2% in fiscal year 2028, and then it declines from there. You're back below 2% starting in fiscal 29. This does factor in those assessed value or tax base growth rates in the tax base that we talked about earlier, the 8%, the 6%, and then 3%. But again, it doesn't factor in revaluation. So if you get a couple large revaluations like you've gotten in the past, I think the new reval schedule is anticipated to maybe not make those not quite as large as they have been, but you get a couple of large revals that will only improve the results on this ratio. You stay below the proposed policy limit here. Bottom chart, debt service to expenditures, you'll see in 2029, you do get up north of 25%, right? Roughly 27 and 28% debt service to expenditures. That's, again, that's getting that pressured a little bit, right? That's a little on the higher end, kind of the max end of that peer group that we looked at. However, it's somewhat offset by the fact that you all have all of these dollars set aside to pay for the debt service. purpose, right? So it's not necessarily pressuring your budget. The dollars are already set aside. And I think having the annual tracking mechanism, keeping an eye on this, and then ultimately when you get to the point of being able to be in that 15 to 20% range, looking to adopt a formal policy. So I think the fact that if you choose to adopt these policies, you're acknowledging it, you're monitoring it, you're keeping an eye on it, will be a positive. Okay? Then we get into the affordability, right? Are the dollars that you've already set aside enough? And the long and short of this is, based upon the current estimates, yes. Again, will be revisited every year as you get updated information, updated project costs, finalize your debt payments, see what kind of actual growth you receive in the tax base. Couple things to highlight for you on this page. I'm not going to walk through the whole thing again, but what key changes here are we've layered in the debt service in column C for the proposed town government projects, really all of town campus in column C. Column F, we've got the Farm Park 1B Event Center debt service. That's layered in now, right? So that used to end in fiscal year 28. You see now it goes out to fiscal year 2048, borrowing to fund that project. And then column G, we've layered in that operating impact, right? It ultimately gets up to that $890,000 a year starting in fiscal year 2030. So we've accounted for all of those things we saw on that chart, the capital costs through the debt payments and the operating allocation. We've also layered in a few additional revenue sources. I and J are the same, but column L, those park impact fees, again, because of the farm park, we're able to pull in more of those restricted revenues. You'll see here in a moment, it doesn't totally offset the debt service, but it covers it for a long period of time. Column M, the Wake County cost share, that 30% that they would contribute towards the debt payments on the fire station. And then finally, column N and O. Column N is something that is not necessarily a revenue, but it's a potential savings within your budget. The current police station is leased. Once you move out of that facility, that is an expense that will not have to be paid anymore. That's about $82,000. That could go towards paying for the new facility as opposed to leasing the facility. And then column O, the reimbursement of those capital savings dollars used for current capital projects. Again, remember that $2.3 million for the LAP project is not guaranteed, but we're assuming it in as part of this plan. All of those revenues in column P compared to the requirements in column H, there is an extended period of time where the revenues will not be high enough to cover those expenditures, particularly some large shortfalls in those early years. However, Mr. Mayor, to your point, those dollars that you've set aside over the years put into capital savings are sufficient to cover that spike, right? And your capital savings fund balance stays positive every year. So between the projected annual revenues and the capital savings you set aside, these first 5 projects, the town campus and Farm Park 1B, under these assumptions, you are able to cash flow.
I think if I look at these, I know years ago when we first started discussion, it was talked that we may have to liquidate this building to be able to do what we want to do. But your numbers say we don't. We can keep this building just like it is. You don't have to liquidate it.
We are not factoring any revenue source or any proceeds from the sale of this building into the plan. If you were to do that, that would improve the results of this plan.
But without that, even with the current assumptions, we're getting pretty close to draining the surplus. And
we are maximizing those revenues.
And
yes,
we're
sir.
assuming 8% growth in, I think it's property tax value. And we had a lot of discourse about the last revaluation. And I don't know if our town can stomach a similar and it won't be that big, that was explosive, but, you know, it's a very sensitive issue, and I just don't know if our town can stomach 8% growth per year. I don't know.
Understood. And just as a point of clarification, the idea is that 8% is natural growth, new tax base, not existing tax base.
All right.
Revaluation would be over and above the 8%. That 8, again, the last 10 years averaged just under 9% of natural growth, excluding the revaluation. So I totally understand your point. I think it's a consideration that you all, obviously, as policymakers have to think about. But the hope, the assumption is that that's natural growth, not reval
Yeah,
growth.
and I think when he made the comment, Michael, he's talking about our ratio to equity, which means if the valuation of property goes up, that equity goes
Increases.
up, no matter what we do tax-wise, you know.
That's right.
It's a different statement.
Debt to assessed value is the ratio, and as your property tax base goes up, same level of debt. The other place that this tax base growth factors in, remember, is that 9.6 cents for capital savings.
Right.
You know, if you don't hit the 8%, doesn't produce as much revenue, that could impact these cash flows.
Yeah, and I think even for more clarity, your 8% figures in just growth and not increases in taxes
Right.
from whatever way.
Just growth in the tax base, no change to the 9.6 cent currently dedicated.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Still cutting it close if all these numbers work out. I mean, going from almost 13 million surplus to 329,000 surplus.
Yeah,
That's
one
kinda
thing,
close.
you know, one thing that has changed over the years, we always thought of that capital thing I always thought of it when we originally done it, was a way to fund to get the buildings. But he has it bigger than this. I mean, it's an ongoing thing that in this plan, we'll have $50 million, somebody will, you know, in 52. Because, you know, it's continually
Right.
providing funding for capital improvements, which we've never had before. So you're right, the fund balance would get down, but we never, you know, up to recent years, I don't know when we first started fund balance for capital program, we just didn't have one. I mean, you just, you know, so that's all. Does a lot of people have capital fund balances? Like, is this kind of unique?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, but I would say, you know, it's gotten to be pretty typical over the years where people call it different things. Some people have debt service funds, some people have capital project funds, some people have capital reserve funds, capital savings funds, but it's not universal, but I would say, you know, it's not absolutely unique, but the fact that you all have been able to do it sort of at this stage of your development, right, is, I would say that's more on the unique side. Most people who are in this growing mode, you know, they don't necessarily have the dollars set aside already that you all do to be able to tackle a project or projects like this.
Yeah, it's like a savings account.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you pull down your savings account to buy something, I guess.
Yes, sir. But, I mean, you nailed it, right? We are tight, right? We're maximizing these revenues. So we got to keep an eye on the results and like I said earlier, we don't grow as quickly, the interest rates come in higher, you know, this plan doesn't necessarily hold. Additional revenues would need to be identified. Likewise, if you grow more quickly, then this looks better. That would just be additional dollars to go towards capital. There are some remaining restricted revenues available. So with the projects that we're funding, Town Campus and Farm Park Phase 1 has no streets built into those 5 projects. So your street impact fees are still growing. There is affordability for some additional street projects. So I think that's important to note. And then on the park impact fees, as I alluded to, they are not totally covering the debt service, right? You can see that far right column, column J, stays positive out through fiscal year 2035. So you're able to cover the farm park debt service through fiscal year 2035 from these park impact fees. After that is where we're tapping into those other revenues to support the debt service. Okay? Scenario 2, I'm not going to go through in as much detail here. You already nailed it. You've kind of maximized your capacity with scenario 1. So any additional projects that you add on top of these 5 projects currently, we would need additional revenue sources to cover those payments. And again, we're assuming those will be all cash funded because we're on the upper end of those debt ratios, your proposed policies. So, to fund those additional projects, we're estimating a little over $3 million of additional revenue would be needed for those projects under scenario 2. The largest of which, Granite Falls, could be covered out of the street impact fees.
The one that we don't have anything used for right now in your chart.
That's right. Yes, sir.
I didn't see it.
I know you're going to come behind me and catch everything that I missed, but I know Amy's got some additional thoughts, and as part of her presentation this evening, I'm happy to answer questions now. I'll stick around if there's anything y'all want to
You finished
revisit.
with your presentation in?
I'm sorry?
You finished with your presentation?
Yes,
Great,
sir.
that's a good job. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure the board has some questions. I guess we've been using your company for how long now?
10? Yeah, maybe almost 10 years. 8 years.
So you pretty much know ins and outs of our financial picture here.
Not as well as Amy does, but yes, sir.
So do you describe it as being healthy?
Absolutely.
And do you describe our plans to be realistic and less, not real risky? How do you describe the
Yeah,
risk
look,
rate?
as I said at the beginning, I think you all have managed yourselves very well from a financial perspective, and you've been very thoughtful in preparing for this project. Y'all have been working on this for a number of years, and you could have chosen to say, all right, well, we're 5 years out from actually starting construction on that facility. We'll deal with funding it when we get there, right? But y'all have already set aside the dollars to be able to fund these projects at this point in time. With these assumptions, assuming these assumptions come to pass, this plan is funded, right? That is very thoughtful. It's very forward-looking in being in a position to do this without having to take an immediate budget impact as soon as you start the projects. Now, I think that makes it a lot less risky, I guess, in terms of being able to fund it. There are assumptions built in here, right? And so we can't guarantee that those revenues and those assumptions will come to pass. Hopefully, we've generally erred on the more conservative side, and hopefully we outperform. But to your point over the years, Mr. Mayor, you've been growing so quickly that is it really realistic to assume a 3% growth rate in your property tax base? Well, that would show that you need more revenue, more pennies dedicated to capital savings today when you expect that this level of growth will continue into the future. So I think it strikes a nice balance of saying we're not going to put too much of the decision on the capital savings tax rate on the front end. We're going to put in what we think, based upon reasonable assumptions, is sufficient, and then revisit it annually as actual results come in. So if risky means like, hey, do we need to come up with additional revenues to fund this, I would say you're managing that risk well. There's certain assumptions, the $2.3 million reimbursement, that are out of your control, they're out of our control, right? But we're assuming that comes in based upon conversations. There are certain things like that the growth in the property tax rate that none of us can say, absolutely, that's going to happen. But I think you've managed it well, and you found a nice balance of trying to fund that here on the front, setting aside the dollars on the front end to be able to address that reasonably going forward, and assuming all comes to pass, have it funded when you start construction.
And also, I think we've dedicated these pennies, which you say is 9 pennies now, and those pennies are more valuable every year. We dedicated these pennies without tax increases. We've kind of stole a penny per year, sort maybe a mentality. So, so we've done that without tax increase. So I guess in worst case, you know, we're trying to do this without tax increase, and I think we've been successful in funding it without tax increase. But worst case, you know, we do have a low tax rate compared to some of the other towns. I don't want us to increase taxes, and I don't think you're proposing in your numbers for tax increase. I'm not sure what, you know, everything else Amy and them do, but in your calculations here in our plan, it doesn't require tax increase.
Not for these projects, not for the town campus, not for the Farm Park Event Center 1B. Anything on top of that would need additional revenues, whether that comes from tax rate or further property tax base growth over performance in future years. I think that's part of the conversation, right? And if you chose to fund all those projects today, I think you'd have to find some additional revenues. But depending upon how things evolve over the next few years, get this plan in place, lock in the cost of the debt, see what property tax growth, there may be opportunities in the future to do that, do additional projects.
And the other side, if the assumptions don't pan out, we might have to slow roll, you know, after the fire department, after the police department, maybe the next building, town hall.
You have the ability to delay those last 2 projects to build up a little more capital savings to address them.
Do you all have any idea when we would know if we would be reimbursed for the $2.3 million?
We're going to point at you, Eric.
This year, next year?
You mean 2.3 in regards to the Main Street project? So we have finalized the cost to complete. And so we'll be inserting that into the interlocal agreement and then working with the city of Raleigh on that. And so it will be this year. They'll take it before their board for approval. Well, this calendar year.
Before July.
And then that's that part. And then we'll continue working with Campo for the reimbursement for the other expected expenditures related to the project.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned slow roll. Is that you, Commissioner? So I guess your plan fully funds the town hall building at $15 million built in there, right? So if something happens in the next 12 months or whatever, I guess that's one building could be slow rolled if we needed to, right? Because I think the first 3 things, the general site, the fire, police station, and the fire station, we're moving on those.
Right.
Yeah,
We could slow
assuming-
roll the town hall if we need to, I guess.
Yeah, Jessica alluded to this earlier, right? We're going to be finalizing those construction schedules. What's currently assumed is that we fund the site work at the end of this fiscal year. June of this year, we will be in front of y'all for the final approvals in the May, June timeframe, LGC approval, and we will issue the debt before the end of this fiscal year. And then come back by the end of the calendar year and fund the police and fire. Again, that is the current sort of working assumptions. Got to get those dates locked in. So yeah, within the calendar year, you've kind of committed to those 3 projects. It's the town hall building and the farm, phase 1B that could evolve. But really, the first 10 years plus of the farm is covered from those park impact fees. So it's really that town hall building is the one that can impact your capital savings.
Right. So I guess on page 17 is the one I was looking at, one you got up there. We really going, when we do this, we locking in on the first three.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Locking in on the first three, and then the town hall, if things, we'll know next year when you come back. But that'd
You'll be
more-
seeing
that'd
me
that'd
a lot
bigger-
before next year, I'm sure.
I guess that'll be a bigger discussion next year on, you know, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Hopefully things can change if the acquisition of grants could come for the park as well as the Veterans Memorial.
Yeah. And you're not figuring any grants in whatsoever.
Just the LAP reimbursement, right? If we call that a grant, outside funding, and the contributions from Wake County towards the fire station.
Yeah.
So grants are outside funding sources.
And that's not
but-
really a grant, that's a matching thing.
Yeah, nothing more. Yeah, I think the thought is maybe Veterans Memorial, there's a potential grant. But we're assuming that in that scenario too, all those lines 7 through 10, we're assuming that you fund those with cash.
And I think we're hoping to have some grants in that park too,
Which would
farm,
help.
which would help.
Yes, sir.
What else would help?
And-
Anything else that we're going to?
And we-
Yeah, so, locking in a better interest rate, right? Property tax coming in better, property tax-based growth coming in better, other revenue sources coming in higher, park fee, impact fees coming in higher.
10% growth,
I'm sorry?
10% growth.
Yeah, 10% growth, exactly. Those are,
growth as well.
yeah, those are the key pieces, right? It's that growth in the value of that 9.6 cents, right? That's a big piece. It is the park impact fees in particular, because we are using that to help fund debt service. The interest rate assumption on the debt we issue, the cost of the projects, right? I mean, those are not locked in yet. Like to say that maybe they come in lower and that would be great. That's not what we've been seeing. I'm not the expert on that, but you never know. Never say never. But those costs tend to be more of a downside risk than an upside risk.
Yeah, of all those things you just listed, I would think that's the probably one that won't happen is those costs come down.
Is that 5% that you projected for us, is that on the high end?
I wouldn't say it's on the high end. It's higher than the current market. There's been periods of time within the last 18 months where we've seen rates approaching that 5%, getting right at that 5%. Currently, if we, depending upon the method of which we go out there, I would say we're probably in that close to 4% to 4.5% range, maybe a little bit under 4% in some scenarios. But so there's some cushion built in there, but I wouldn't say we're being overly conservative, particularly when we've got, two of the largest projects not going until the end of this calendar year. Well, as you know, a lot can happen in 11 months to interest rates, and then the other two projects in fiscal 2028. So we kind of blend that 5% to say, we're getting close on the site development within a year for two of the larger projects, but then 2 years away on two of the others. So the 5% kind of gives us a fair average to be assuming. We're going to lock in 3 of those rates this calendar year,
Right.
but, there's still another $27 million of debt to lock in the following year. So, it's a little while before we get all that debt costs locked in.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitch.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. I always enjoy having you. You really do a good job explaining things to the
does.
board, I think. What's your other guy's name?
Ted,
Ted. Ted does a good job too. So I remember Ted too. He's still with you, I guess.
yes, sir. He would have loved to have been here tonight as well.
You drew the short straw in.
Yeah, he drew it. He had to. He couldn't be here, so I got lucky.
Well, you did a great job. Appreciate it. As always, your company does a great job for us. And we wouldn't be here today talking about these. I mean, this is a lot of money for this little small town to spend. We wouldn't be here without your help. So thank you very much for that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a pleasure. We've enjoyed it and getting to know all of y'all and the opportunity to work with you over the years. So thank you for that.
And I would have to say, you know, just to comfort the board a little bit, you know, and April can probably confirm this, you've been here quite a while too, is whatever Ted and Mitch says, it happens. I mean, they don't shoot smoke. They really do a good job of explaining things, and do appreciate that.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitch.
So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to finish this out a little bit to show a little bit of what we just talked about in more graphic form. I know I find it helpful. I hope you all do too. So I showed you earlier the model from last year through this graphic thing. To me, it's easier. I like pictures. A little easier to see. So what we have here is taking those scenarios that Mitch talked about, putting them into this chart. So this was scenario one. And again, scenario one was focused on funding, not those out year projects, but the immediate projects with the campus and the farm 1B. Again, this model maximizes the revenues available. And we're going to have a graphic after this to drive that home one more time, because I like pictures and I think they help remember the story. And it assumes the receipt of that $2.3 million from Campo and the city of Raleigh. And it's based on those assumptions of growth. So let's talk a little bit about this maximizing revenues available, because it does require a little bit of a mindset change on how we think about things, especially for those of us who've been here for a long time. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So what this chart shows on the left-hand side, this is take 5 years, just kind of like Mitch did. It's very similar to some of the charts he had. I chose some different groupings. There's a lot of nuances in fund balance, so I had to simplify it for this. Just know there's some nuances here. I'm going to start at the bottom, which is the general fund unavailable. Okay, that's typically things like there's something called reserve for stabilization that the state law requires us to account for, as well as anything that's in your 33% policy. Okay, so that's what that blue is at the bottom. So think of that as money we can't spend unless there's an emergency, right? Hurricane comes through and we have to replace a bridge somewhere. You have to spend that up front. That's what that money is for, right? That's that 33%, the 4 months of operating expenditures. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to flip to the top of those bars, to the blue on the top, the darker blue. That's PAL bill money. That's restricted by the state, mainly needs to be used for resurfacing. So we talked about Granite Falls Boulevard earlier. You can see how it gets bigger over time. We used a lot of that funding to resurface Granite Falls Boulevard. So you're going to see that in just a minute when we do the projections. Underneath the PAL bill is the capital savings. That's kind of the orangey pink color. So that's, Mayor, it does go back to fiscal year 19. So when we started, I think we started with like a penny back then. And over time, the number of pennies that have gone towards that capital savings has been able to grow to the 9.6 cents today. So at the end of FY25, on this past June 30th, that's where we had the capital savings. You can see that growing over time. What we need to talk about now is the green area. That's the excess of the 33% benchmark. For many years, the town has had kind of this pot of money available to use for capital projects. Maybe something new comes along. We're able to quickly pivot and use some of that money for this thing that has come along. So when we're talking about maximizing revenues available, what you're going to see is we're starting to program the use of that money in green. Okay, so just to kind of show a little bit what's happening, I want to talk about where we are today. Okay, I kept everything the same other than the green. Just assuming everything's the same, not updating PAL bill or savings, anything like that. But in this fiscal year, you've appropriated a little over $4 million of that money in green, right? It's gone for, some of it came from the budget, right? So there's some one-time expenditures in the budget, and we used a little bit of fund balance, about $250,000, to balance the budget. We used another quarter for purchase orders that were outstanding at the end of the year. I'm going to pick on the chief because he's always sitting right in front of me. Like they ordered a golf cart, and the golf cart hadn't come in yet on June 30th. And so we carried over that expenditure to the next year. It was not $250,000, but it was part of the $250,000. Okay?
It's a really nice golf cart.
Appreciate that clarity.
And then there's been a couple of large transfers to support the Main Street project. And so that totaled $3.8 million.
Before you leave that, where is the impact fee, not the, like the water and sewer impact fund?
So this is general fund only.
Okay.
I toyed with that, but when I did the big with all of the different fund balances, I was like, we're going to spend 20 minutes on this chart.
Okay.
So I simplified it just to the general
Park
fund.
and the
They are not included in this chart.
transportation.
That's right.
So we had that transportation, which is on top of the power bill then, I guess, right?
Right. This does not include money for the parks fees, does not include the transportation fees, and the LAC grant has a current fund balance, which will go away by the time it's done. So that's not in here. Okay. Okay, so now let's take this one step further. I did it for today. Now I went ahead and said, okay, what's it going to look like at the end of this fiscal year? Potentially, right? So you see Powell Bill got a little smaller way up there at the top because we used it for Granite Falls Boulevard resurfacing. Capital savings continues to grow. No program use for that yet. Mitch talked about that in his presentation, continuing to accumulate those savings right now. Look at what happens to the bottom number, the general fund unavailable. Because what's happening is that unavailable, it's 33% of expenditures. Well, every year those operating expenditures are going to keep growing. Right. And so the amount that goes into the unavailable will also keep growing. Okay, so that's why in the model, it's $300,000 is what we're contributing because that's what's left of that excess. It's just that tiny green sliver. It's still $300,000, but it's small on this chart. So that's why when I'm talking about maximizing revenues available, right? It's a little bit of a mindset from because we've always had this big green part of fund balance. When things come up, we can use it. But with this model, the financial model is using all of this funding. It's programming the capital savings. It's programming what's left in the green. And so all of it's being used for something in this 5-year plan. Okay. And this is where I just added on that $2.3 million because it's also in the model. We're assuming that that money comes in. We've talked about that, I think. So anyway, I wanted to share that because for me, the graph kind of drawing it out for myself really brought it home for me. And I hope it's helpful to you all. What's happening with this planned maximization of revenues? That what happens is if we want to add something new in the future, it means something's going to have to go away. Okay. All right, so that was scenario 1. I also wanted to just throw it out for you what it looks like for scenario 2 with those additional projects. Those are the ones in blue. And again, the restatement, the model shows that if we were to follow this plan, additional revenues would be needed, except for Granite Falls Boulevard, because there's lots of street fees available. And so a $5 million Granite Falls Boulevard project would not be an issue. Okay. Don't remember what my next slide, I just circled it. Okay, so here we go. Goals, so our goals for tonight. We still have a dessert to go in tonight's meal, but this is the end of the entree. So I just wanted to revisit our goals, okay? And again, it's not something that's going to get resolved tonight. The purpose here is to spur the conversation. Already heard some things about, well, delaying this or moving that. The long-term goal here for this year's budget process is to make sure that we put together a CIP that reflects your priorities. Okay. And then the other part is to make sure that we're prepared for those debt issuance. just like you were just talking about. These projects here in the 26, 27, in the black font, the site, the police station, the main fire station, according to the model, things are working well with that. But we just want to make sure that everybody's prepared if there are any questions or concerns about moving in that direction, that you have the opportunity to have that conversation.
Very good. And as we talked about, your model assumes we don't get any grants.
That's correct. It assumes no grant. The end of it.
Very healthy budget.
Yeah.
One thing, if you could back up 2 slides. You can go forward one to put the box back. Yeah. So with regards to the capital projects that are in the blue, those are things that you all have spoken with me about, with each other about, that we've even had breakout conversations regarding. And I wanted to simply kind of point that out. So if y'all have any specific questions about those, you can most definitely ask those, or if there are any points of clarification. Just want to make sure everyone was in full understanding of the Veterans Memorial, the Granite Falls Boulevard, downtown parking, and the land purchases.
That they are going to be delayed.
No, that you're clear on what those mean. They're simply stated. You know, they don't come with project descriptions and all that kind of stuff, but they're simply stated.
Mm-hmm.
Something we got to work on.
Yes.
And we got to dig a little deeper and figure out, you know, there's been some talk that we can get some grants on that downtown parking. So, you know, that would be great. A lot of these things we have to commit to without having the grant.
Right. And that helps us out a lot. So same with the farm. You commit, you establish the vision. The vision is what you take out, and you shop for the grants, for the public-private partners, and for also petitioning Wake County for standing in agreement with us and providing funding toward those things as well.
Yeah. Well, some of the things June talked about with the park can change those numbers some too.
That's correct.
So it's, you know, one thing, and I try to make it plain to Mitch, and every year it changes. So what he's presented tonight is a plan that every year we'll have a new plan. So it changes.
On the legal side for the 4 blue items, I believe the Veterans Memorial is the only one that has been part of an action by the board. That's correct. So the Veterans Memorial is in a different box because it was shown and there was a vote on the plan. The others are discussion items that have been kicked around, but there has been no action by the board as a body. So those are, you still have some runway on those. Commissioner Sneed talked about pushing them back. Legally, you haven't even done them yet, so you're not delaying them.
And sorry, I think tonight is sort of a stepping off point. Speak for Mitch, but you know, if there's things that you want to see, different scenarios, or try some different placements of these projects, Davenport is on call for us, and they can come back and run those different scenarios for you if you want to see what the different impacts might be.
Good. So anything else, Amy, did you, is this financial policy update, is that a separate item?
Yes, sir.
That is? So you still got to cover that? Yeah. Everybody, you want to take we've been going about 2 hours right now. You want to take a quick break?
Yes.
So let's start back. Let's try to start back at 1:45, just a 5-minute break if we can just get a real quick one in.
Thank you.
And Amy, how long will it take you to do this last part?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to have a quick closed session on that?
Talk about it.
Huh?
We are thinking that we will not need the closed session at tonight's meeting. It can come back at a future meeting.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's take a 5-minute. We'll come back at 1:45. We in recess. come back into order out of recess. Amy, I think you got one item left, which is the financial policy update.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's all yours.
All right, very good. Financial policy update. So as I mentioned in the cover memo, there's two policies we're going to talk about tonight. One is the overarching financial policy, and the other is the town's purchasing policy. So let's start with the financial policy. This policy was last reviewed in 2016. It has served the town well. Not many changes are suggested, it's substantially the same policy, basically what I'm trying to say, okay? There are two additions I'm proposing, and all of this is part of preparing for this upcoming debt issuance. A lot of the things that we're recommending as changes, Mitch has already covered in his presentation, okay? Because it's been so long since the board adopted this policy, in fact, I think perhaps only the mayor was seated at the table back then. I thought what we should do is, and I'm not going to read it all to you, but I do want to go through it and highlight some of the major pieces, because I think it's important, particularly as we're going into this debt issuance. So if you, probably the easiest way to follow along, there is a draft resolution in here, in your packet, and that's what following along here in my presentation. Again, I'm not going to read it to you. The plan is that both of these policies will be before you for adoption at your February meeting. Okay, so you have time to read through them, but highlights. Okay, first is budgetary policy. Basically, this policy says we're going to follow state law. Okay, I did edit this section a little bit because there's some places where it was a little redundant, where we're just restating state law, and so, kind of cleaned up some of the wording there. It does clarify that one-time revenues will be used for one-time uses. A good example of this was the ARPA revenues we got a few years ago. Remember? And we had a big discussion about this is one-time infusion of cash. Let's not use it for operating expenses. Let's use it for one-time purposes. Okay? The other thing in budgetary policy is it does require regular reporting to you as a board. Now, it doesn't specify how often. Well, it does say, actually, I do think it did say quarterly, minimally quarterly. Yes, at least quarterly. I don't know if you noticed, in your agenda packets, I have actually gone back to monthly for you all. I think it's important that you see the financial status monthly. I did it a little more streamlined. It's a one-page back and front, but I do give it to you monthly. It helps me, and it's important for you and for the public to know where we stand. Okay. The next section is fund balance policy. Again, Mitch talked a lot about this. No significant changes here. Still proposing to keep with that 33% of general fund expenditures. I could go on here as my favorite talking point, why fund balance is so important, but I bet you all could tell me why, because I've talked about it so much. In emergencies, it's important to have that cash flow. All of our revenue comes in November, December. We got to have that cash flow to operate.
Yeah, a little history on that 33%. Amy, I think you were here at the time, but at one time, the town really had not very much money, and we spent all of it. And I think if you drop below that 33%, you get a letter from the LGC, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was right before I got here, because I was going through some papers and found it.
But every year we would get a letter, stating that our fund balance is insufficient in case of emergency. But so then we adopt this before you came.
Well, this was 16. I want to say you adopted the fund balance policy not long after I got here. So that's probably about 14, 15, and then we turned it into a bigger financial policy in 16.
Right, because we used to not be able to make that 33. We had no money at the end of the year. I mean, it was just getting by.
Yep.
But you do get a letter. We hadn't got a letter in many years.
No, and actually the treasurer's office has changed some of the benchmarking they use for that. They used to have a certain formula because they'd put you into population peer groups.
Yeah.
And you had to have, and then they'd look at what all your population peer groups have, and then you had to be a certain percentage of that. And then they changed it to expenditure peer groups, but they don't really publicize that as much as they do.
Yeah.
They really have broadened what they they call it a financial indicators of concern. So it's more than just fund balance now.
Yeah, I didn't ask Mitch because I know we was fighting for time, but I was thinking that like Raleigh and the big cities, they have like a 10% fund balance or something. It's a really low number.
Usually really big cities will bring it down because the raw dollars is so much, a 10% of their budget is still a lot of money.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so no significant changes to fund balance policy. Next is capital improvement policy. There is one change here that is a little bigger. When I first got here, and Mary, you may remember this, there was a time where our capital budget, capital improvement plan, was a police car and some new snowflake lights.
Oh, snowflake lights.
Need more.
And so, those are now rolled into the operating budget, those kinds of things. We've grown as a town. We're onto the big things of what I like to call ABCD of capital: asphalt, bricks, concrete, and dirt. And now with the addition of the fire department, now we have an F, which is fire apparatus. Because those are $1 million pieces of equipment. And so we need to plan for those. So you don't see them in the plan now, but during this year, we're going to start rolling that apparatus plan into our CIP. So what's changed with the definition of capital project? We've increased the threshold so that it's $100,000 or more and a useful life of 5 or more years. So we should be capturing the ABCDF with that. Next is the debt policy. So this has some significant changes here because part of it was existing already. We don't use debt to finance operating revenue. I don't think the state would allow us to do that anyway. We finance things for their useful life. So if we have a police car that's going to last 3 years, we're not going to finance it for 6. And then the debt ratios are what's new. So again, Mitch covered all of this. He talked about the proposed policy limits. And then it sets amounts for the 10-year payout. It sets an amount for the debt to assessed value, but it says in the future, we will think about setting a range for the debt service to expenditures. Okay. And then the other new one is this cash management and investment policy. This is not a change to what we do, but the North Carolina Government Finance Officers Association recommends that everyone have a written cash management and investment policy. And so all we're doing here is just putting in writing our current practices, which again is we will follow state law about where funds can be invested. And it makes the statement that the town emphasizes the safety and the liquidity of investment rather than the yield, right? So what that means is we're going to avoid risky investment and stick with things that are safe and where we can convert into a liquid cash more quickly. It says that the town will deposit cash in an official depository, which is the fancy statutory way of saying the bank, or the capital management trust, which is where you use for your investment of funds now. And then again, just like the other, it says regular reporting, at least quarterly. But again, I provide that information to you monthly currently. Okay, so that's it for the financial policy. It's pretty short. I encourage you to read it before February 3rd. The second policy that is proposed for some amendments, I did not bring you the whole policy here. It's very long. I think Parks and Rec alluded to it when they were up here about having to get bids for things. It's very long. It's very technical because in a lot of ways it just restates state law and federal uniform guidance, which is the federal law for how you go about procuring things with federal money, like federal grants. The big change here is something that we've been talking about with the town attorney for months. To make sure that we can come up with a recommendation for you all about clarifying the approval of contracts. Okay. Right now, the purchasing policy has very non-specific language. It's a pretty broad delegation to the town manager for contract approval. Your town managers in recent years have not been taking advantage of that broad delegation. They've been bringing large contracts to you. So what we wanted to do is just tighten the language in here to codify that and put some dollar numbers on there. So what the proposed language does is it says that the town board will approve contracts that are $250,000 or more. Okay. You will approve legal services, which makes sense because you hire the town attorney. And you will approve anything formal bidding. That is by state law. You can't delegate that away anymore. You're explicitly authorizing the town manager or the authority to sign contracts that are less than $250,000. And then finally, it codifies the manager's delegation to department heads to sign contracts less than $2,500. That's consistent with what we do for the purchase of goods. When somebody goes out and buys something, department heads can approve purchases under $2,500. And certain software renewals, right? There's certain things, I mean, your financial software, we're going to keep using that. We're not going to not go financial software. And so certain renewals are also delegated to department heads.
Amy, I got a question for
Yes,
you
sir.
before you move on. How does that amount compare to our peers around us?
It varies. I have not specifically asked in Wake County, but I have seen, because we were looking at some different numbers, it escapes me now. Some were like 100,000, some were 500,000. As you know from the news, some were much higher. 250 was, from the ones we did see, again, it wasn't just Wake County, but from the ones we did see, 250 was kind of in the middle, and it seems like a reasonable amount given some of the contracts that come through.
So all these budgeted contracts already in the budget, already been approved contracts?
The amounts have been approved in the budget, yes, sir.
Right, and all the manager's doing is just awarding the contract by signature, which I think that's fine. I think the one that's kind of in here is it should be, and it may cover it here. It should be for small repairs that are almost emergency related. AC get broken, he don't need to get approval from us like it used to be. Used to be the manager had to come to us to approve a certain contract to even get a repair on an AC done. So that's the kind of thing I think we need to avoid. So are we doing that?
Yes.
Is that what this does?
And I think that's what happened is the pendulum used to be way over here, that they would have to come to the board for a lot. And then it swung way over here. And so what this does is it brings it back.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's recognizing that the formal bidding will catch almost all of those things. So any of the contracts for owner's rep bid, all these things are bid out. The things that this typically addresses, you mentioned, like the HVAC, or if a compactor truck were to clunk out, or it's already in the budget to be able to proceed with the purchase of something of that nature. That's what that would include.
The legal concern was that the previous policy, or the policy that we have until you take action on this, is that it could be read that everything has been delegated to the manager. That is, if it is in the budget, it has been delegated to the manager unless state law requires that action by the governing body be taken. And that would be the recommendation to change that.
Okay. So we add the numbers in.
We're adding the numbers to be more clear and specific about the delegation of authority.
In light of the recent developments around spending, I think it's probably best that we have these numbers associated so that it takes out all of the unnecessary questioning.
And as I said, we've been talking about this for months. It's not necessarily in reaction, but the timing is appropriate.
Yeah, to say the least.
There's also the reality that managers tend to bring significant accomplishment of approved budget items that are of a certain size back to the board. So that is often why you were seeing things. That is, it was just a good management idea, even if the authority was already there for the manager to have handled it without your involvement. So you will likely still see things under $250,000 from time to time.
Yeah.
And you'll always see them if they require a budget amendment.
And then the last proposed change to the purchasing policy is the federal uniform guidance update. So again, that's the Fed's rules for how to spend federal money. They have recognized inflation, so they've increased some of their thresholds. And so since our policy is a restatement in some sections of federal policy, all we're doing is updating those numbers to reflect their updated threshold.
I have a question. So on the purchase contracts and the service contracts that are in here, so the service contracts costing 15 to 350,000 shall be procured using the uniform guidance small purchase procedure. So that's law, I guess. So that 350 is, those 350 are throwing me off in there, because are these numbers in red what the staff and Eric are given authority
So thank you
to know?
for clarifying. So section 2 of that resolution, all of those changes are because of the federal uniform guidance. These are all federal changes.
Okay.
Yep. So all of this is under federal grant spending.
Each one of those says as follows, and I'm like, where's the as follows? What am I supposed to be reading? Okay, that makes sense then. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so that's it. So again, not going to be before you for consideration until February 3rd. So if you do have questions in the meantime, please reach out to the manager. He'll cycle those to me. We'll get those in.
Okay.
And that is, so yes, no action tonight, February 3rd. There you go. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we didn't make 9 o'clock, but we did make 9:30.
Yeah, I thought you was on talk about the proposed changes that Mitch had talked about with the ratios changes and the,
Oh, yes, sir. So that was under the debt policy.
yeah,
Yep. That text has been added to that section.
okay.
And you're comfortable with those changes
Yes, sir.
for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, based on, we did it sort of coming at it from both ends, looking at what the benchmarks are for other communities and where things were falling out with some of these scenarios, just to make sure that we don't want to set a policy that we immediately violate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the typical policy ranges for the 10-year payout for 50 to 60%. I don't give any benefit to being higher than the 50%. I mean, that's a good policy. That's the most common policy you see. Debt to assessed value, typical range is 2% to 3%. And I think 2.5% is reasonable. You can stay in compliance with that with the current plan, and you're a growing community, just like fund balance, right? You know,
Right.
Smaller tax base is more limiting, so maybe starting out a little higher. And then debt service to expenditures, that's the one where we've seen a lot of communities like yourself just don't even address, because you have a smaller budget, you got to address the infrastructure on the front end, right? You're not building town hall, police station, fire station to serve you right here today, right? It's going to last you for multiple years, and so your budget's going to grow into that. As your budget grows, that ratio improves, and so I think this strikes a nice balance of saying, hey, we're acknowledging it, we think it's an important ratio, and we see it every year, we track it, we monitor it, and as we grow and continue to mature and our budget catches up, we'll look at establishing it. So you're not ignoring it, you're acknowledging it, but you're not quite, you don't want to adopt a policy at 30% when most people are 15 to 20%. It's like, what does that policy do?
So if we do go get a bond rating, will we need to have those policies adopted?
You don't have to, but it helps. It is a positive when you go to the bond rating. All the things you're doing in these policies, just having policy, right? Management is an important part of the credit rating. Having a policy is a checkbox. Having a policy that includes specific ratios is better. Having a policy that requires reporting, transparency, regular reporting to you all is another checkbox policy. So I think regardless of how we end up issuing this debt, whether we go to a bank or whether we go to the rating agencies, sell in the public market, this is going to be a positive step for you all.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mitch.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. Y'all did a good job tonight. Tag teaming, great job. Appreciate effort y'all put in. And I'm sure we'll be hearing much more before we get to July 1, right? So what else we got? Eric, you got something you want to cover, or save it for later or cover it tonight?
Yes, I wanted, if you think it's, because we had chatted on it, the downtown parking.
Yeah.
If that's something you wanted to cover, because I know we had previous conversations and broken out groups, but I wanted to bring that before you so that we could get action on that.
Yeah, I think maybe bring the board up what, I know the board had gave you directions of doing some things. Maybe bring the board up.
I can bring you up to speed on that. And so though,
Thank you.
I have the PDFs pulled up. I'll pull up this one additional thing in the meantime. Additionally, so to give context, the downtown experience has been something that the downtown experience, as far as small businesses, patronage, walkability, the Main Street Vision Project, as we move through the Main Street Vision Project, which has encompassed the corridor of Main Street from Jonesville down to North Main, past Main and Young intersection. A lot of the conversations of late have become more specific. So we've started at a high level, like looking at the corridor, and now we're looking at how do we establish a thriving downtown district or a location or destination. And so that conversation has been evolving over the last, I would say 18 months, as we kind of moved and seen the light at the end of the tunnel of the Main Street project, and also continue to engage our small businesses that are at the Main and Young intersection, and also the businesses that have come into the Cobblestone area. And then as we continue to partner with the chamber and have more mingle on mains and look at what does the ecosystem look like business-wise, and also the experience for our residents look like at Main and Young. And even as we look at our budget conversation and looking at our ratio between our property versus commercial tax base, a lot of these conversations have revolved in the idea of pursuing a way to add more parking, more convenient parking, more ways for our community, our visitors, people in the surrounding area to be able to come into our downtown area and park has been a topic that I've been engaged with, and then also we've talked with you all about and had separate, disparate conversations about. And so that has all culminated. Us as staff, we have taken on the different ideas that have been presented from some of you, community members, small business owners, on where will be a great place to have parking in downtown, considering as we've transitioned to owning property at the Main and Young intersection with the transition of the fire station, building a fire station, what do we do with the old fire station? All those things have kind of culminated to this. And so what I wanted to talk with you all about was I've worked with myself and Michael in economic development. We work with our town engineer of Bolton and Mink, and we've pursued looking at what is it like to add parking at the Main and Young intersection. We've looked at the different, we've engaged the business owners to see their openness to it, the property owners more specifically. The property owners see their opening to it, their openness to the idea, and also looked at some of the limiting factors, the impacts environmentally with stormwater, and all those different things. And what I have given you all is a draft concept plan that proposes the idea of expanded parking in the Rolesville downtown area. And so if you look at what has been presented, some of you have seen this idea via just us talking, staff talking to you all while looking at IMAPs, but we wanted to get a more conceptual draft concept and preliminary concept plan in front of you. And if you look at this proposed idea, you see that the parking lot is over 140 parking spots that are proposed, that are captured in here. As we get into a more detailed engineering design, we'll be able to specify that more as far as the layouts. But the essence of this is to look at the different properties that are there that these property owners would be willing to partner, contribute, or we will pursue by way of acquisition to create downtown parking that would allow for increased patronage to the businesses and help it be our contribution to help stimulate that economic ecosystem and the live, work, play experience of our residents in our downtown area. And so I bring this before you as something for you to look at, to get your feedback on. This is something that we've committed economic development funds to, given that it was being ideated from that perspective. But we would only be able to move further with the engineering design with your approval. And also part of it would include pursuing eminent domain on a property that would, that if we were to acquire, would allow for that access point off South Main and give us ample egress in that area. And so this parking lot is a flat lot that would connect to South Main and East Young and provide an opportunity for more streamlined access to those businesses in that area. One thing I wanted to just share as far as the environmental impacts, if you look at the second document that I've given you that's more color coded, you see that we've made progress on looking at what the stormwater impacts, what stormwater infrastructure impacts would be in there. And so this particular project, even though it would be focused on parking, would consist of a larger stormwater engineering effort in that area. The good thing about it is that we have already have intentions on, we have already done a study, preliminary study on the current stormwater state of the Perry Street community to help improve that, because we know that it's been something that they have come to us a lot about. And with the resurfacing of the area, it will make the off-site improvements that we will need to do as a result of the parking lot, they will qualify for Power Bill funding to be able to do that. And so Amy mentioned with our CIP project with Power Bill that it will be streets, but there's also a stormwater aspect that can be included or paid for out of Power Bill funds that is now eligible to address. I think that change in the use of that funding was probably like 2 years ago, and they've also allowed more expanding things around greenways as well. But in the context of this, this will be a project that would not be immediate, but the process of acquiring the property, pursuing the eminent domain that will be required, the engineering work is something that would take time, But in order for us to move forward, I would like to just have a conversation with you all about it and get your approval, and most importantly, for you all to take action to empower us to move forward with the things that are necessary to continue with the design feasibility assessment and the eminent domain that will be attached to making this vision come to life. So in general, I want to look to you all for feedback. If you had any questions or comments with that, gladly field it. Again, this is preliminary, but solidifying the idea by way of board action would be important and also essential for us to continue pursuing the idea.
Question, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Manager. If I'm looking at this map correctly, the color coordinated one, the drainage improvements seems to be pretty extensive. If I'm looking at coming out of the parking and going all the way up the street and then going around your circle.
Right.
Do you see where I'm going with this? Is here, 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 here. So it seems to me that that's a very major part of this project as well, the drainage improvements. Am I reading that correct?
Yes.
Correctly? So that is how expansive this project would be. It would go across Young Street, or is that Main Street? Main Street, and then also it would go around the parking area in the back, and then also through it, the way that is.
So the pink is sidewalks.
Okay.
The green is the parking surface. The blue is a place where the stormwater from the parking lot will be captured to slow it down for the spread. And then the red will be a place where there will be slope. So in order to have flow of water back toward the street, you would have to elevate that that parking spot. So the high point of that parking spot will be essentially when you're looking at it near the blue. There will be the high point.
But the drainage improvements is what I'm referring to.
Correct. So the drainage improvements in that Perry Street area are things that we had already planned on doing. And those are things we've been working on for the last 2 years, but wanted to wait for the Main Street project to be done before we implemented it. And so the existence of the dotted line doesn't necessarily mean pipe or anything of that nature. We'll work to see if it can be achieved through regrading the ditches, because there are several ditches there that are just over time, it's just pretty flat. Like there's very little flow when it comes to the ditch lines in those areas. Those things are in the right of way and won't require from our pre-assessment any right of way acquisition. It would be temporary construction easements, but it will be the equivalent of cutting ditches to allow for better flow, the same way we did on William Street with the Main Street project, but much less intense as far as the requirement and proximity to creeks and things that need to be taken into account as far from the Army Corps of Engineers. And so it would be anytime that you do a resurfacing of a street in its full width, you must address the ADA requirements in the area, which is why we had to do the handicap ramp, the ADA ramps on Granite Falls Boulevard, and also it's to our best, to the interest of everyone in that community, to address the stormwater issue, to slope the streets in a way that it will take the water to that specific side of the street and to the ditch lines. There are some concrete pipes underneath two of those streets that will likely need to be replaced, and also at the driveways, and most of those through pre-assessment, you walk it, either dirt, soil, sediment, or over time, the concrete pipe on these driveways have been crushed. They need to be replaced as well. So we'll be to the benefit of that community. They've been asking for us for, since I've even arrived, for us to address those stormwater issues, pave, and also pave the street, and after the, in their own words, the abuse that had been happening to those streets from it being used as like a bypass to the Main and Young intersection. And so all that to say, the work that we want to do in that area is something we had already planned on doing. And so we'll just supplement it. And I wanted to bring it up because we will consider this to be one single project that will be done in phases as well, similar to the Main Street the municipal complex. But we would start with the stormwater, which we had already planned on doing, but I did not want to not mention that since it will be benefit this and also be connected to it in some way.
Eric, with respect to the fire department property, at some point, the fire department won't be there.
That's correct.
Assuming it would go commercial, would this design eliminate the need for parking for that particular parcel?
This design alone would not eliminate the need for parking, but if we were to move on to other things we talked about, the establishing a downtown district that would decrease the stormwater and parking requirements for any businesses or redevelopment in the area, this would be the very next move or something that we would need to do. This will complement the vision for that.
Yeah, I think we're proposing, after talking to several downtown people, is right now to do anything at the fire department, we've got to build a parking lot anyway.
Yes.
We would have to build a parking lot if we want to put something in there or rent it out or whatever. It doesn't have.
Even if we had adequate parking, and I'm not saying
I'm talking
this
about
is
today.
adequate.
I'm talking about today.
Oh, today.
If we want to do anything, we have to build a parking lot.
No, I'm talking about once this is
Yeah. But
developed.
and also any of those properties down there do anything, they have to build a parking lot.
Right.
So you have all these independent parking lots everywhere with drainage
Trying to get rid
issues,
of that.
drainage issues on everything. This would cure that problem where all these adjoining properties will be able to eliminate having parking spot, and also drain water, so they don't have to put stormwater in or parking in.
Yeah.
You make them a downtown district, which the building is the only thing they're responsible for.
So-
It's the only way we'll be able to do
Yeah.
a lot of
And-
this down there.
and-
So let me make sure I have this clear for myself, because I don't think I really got clarity on it. So the dotted orange lines that I'm seeing, this is this is how far this drainage improvement program or process would go. It would literally extend across the street, the way this is drawn. And that is in support of this particular project with the parking lot, or is this just like this is in a conjunction with the parking lot to help out with the campus and things that we're putting over there?
So the stormwater improvements was things we had already planned on doing.
Okay, got that.
This is the intention to improve the stormwater experience or the stormwater infrastructure in the area is over 2 years old. The idea for a parking spot is less than 6 months old.
Yeah, the storm.
But I wanted to bring it up to you because these projects are in such close proximity that it's to our benefit to connect them and to take that any potential future work we would have to take into account, because what we don't want to do is improve the stormwater situation and then build a parking lot that would increase the stormwater flow.
This mitigate all of
Yeah.
that.
This would mitigate that, and this also would proactively mitigate any concern that any of the residents in the immediate area would have around the increased stormwater flow in the area from the development at the main intersection.
I think that's clarity that was needed. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for that.
you're right.
And I think also, and a little bit more than what is, we have said all along that after the Main Street project is done, after Granite Falls is done, that Prairie Street
That's correct.
and William Street had to be repaved.
That's correct.
And stormwater has to be redone and all
That's
those.
correct.
So this kind of puzzle fits into that a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. Because even if we don't do the parking, we still got to do all that.
We still need to do it.
And you
We
still
would just
have
want to make
drainage.
sure we prepare for the future.
But you still have the drainage from all the commercial that are going in. If
That's correct.
anything goes up there, we won't.
We need the parking.
What we do.
We need it.
That's,
So I have a question. So is there the possibility of, while replacing the stormwater drainage throughout this project, that we encounter any of the problems that we encountered on Main Street initially?
No, so there aren't any other major utilities in the area. And so I don't see this as being as invasive as the Main Street project, given how far we had to cut and lower. We're not lowering a street in this case. We will just be building up on that. We will be patching and then resurfacing. We do have plans to engage that community to see what they would like to see in the area. And so if you look at, when you come into Perry Street off Main Street, you turn, you make the left, you see that some of the setbacks and on some of it's enough room for sidewalk. So I don't know if the if their walking experience would say, look, we would love to have sidewalk on one side of the street here or not. But that's something that we would engage them to see if there's something else they would like to do. But our intentions right now is to simply cut the ditches, clean up the ditches, and replace any concrete pipe that's underneath the street that may be necessary. But we just want to better it. This will be something that will be typical. The recommendation, I know that there is a recommendation to replace that pipe underneath that street at Perry Street. I don't know the name of the street that turns to the right there, but the assessment does say it needs to be replaced. But
I think we're meeting in witching hour.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans? Anything tonight, or are we just going to have this for some further discussion? Or we'll go with this.
It's in the discretion of the board. If the board would like to take action to approve this project, we would then bring forward the additional pieces at a subsequent meeting. If, however, this is not a project that the board wants to work on right now, given other priorities, that is also great news for the staff. But it would require a vote for us to go to the next level.
We need it.
We do. So there's always unanswered stuff. So if we get down into this and we see we don't want to do this project, it's not a binding thing you have to.
Absolutely not.
blindly go into
Absolutely not.
If they take action. on
Nope.
it.
You pull the plug at a future meeting and say, yeah, put that one on the shelf. Put it on the shelf. The numbers couldn't have been way too high.
Yeah.
We put it on the
expensive
shelf.
and all,
That's right.
Everything.
That's
It's really, I guess what you're saying is they got to be on board for y'all to spend a lot more time and get the
Correct.
numbers together and
yes,
doing what we have to do.
It's time to spend real money, and this is a significant capital expenditure. It's well in excess of the authority you just gave him.
Well, I would say, if the board approves tonight to go forward, that before you spend real money, come back to the board and let them be aware of what you're spending.
yes, we come back to you with the phased approach and what will be the next step. Because it would extend over a lot of time.
Because I don't want anybody to be blindsided by what's going on. And, what were you thinking, Lynn?
Wait, I'll talk with Amy about that offline. We are at time, sir.
Yeah, you think about where you get the money from.
Yeah,
I know what you're thinking.
yes,
Yeah, that's,
yeah, that part. There's always that.
yeah. And she said, I think Mitch said we had a $63 million project. we're doing. So this is small potatoes in a way. But
69.
as Eric said, and Eric was gonna spend a lot of that money anyway on the, because some of it comes out of the.
Yeah, so the stormwater improvements would have been, are still planned to be Powerball money and will be included in the upcoming, we're doing the engineering work now. We have accounted for the engineering expenses for the stormwater design, the stormwater improvements in this fiscal year, but next year, after July 1, so there will be an allotment or assignment or what have you of the Powerball funds to do the street resurfacing late this summer. And so we're going to proactively try to get the design there so we can not have that stretch out too long and get that done later this year as far as the paving of the Perry Street and then also proactive upgrading of the stormwater infrastructure in the area.
So let me get your opinion for the board. So with all this stuff we know going on, the Perry Street, the drainage problems, downtown thing, the future fire department, what we're going to do. Should we move along with this?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Then the good thing is when we do the stormwater improvement, we're going to do it anyway. It would not be a dramatic increase in the cost of it to just take the future into account. It will actually be smart of us to do that so that we don't have to redo anything in regards to that. But I do think this will be great. be a proactive step to ensuring that our downtown, that specifically that area, will continue to thrive.
That's good, because I wasn't sure what your answer's going to be, so.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I do think there's a lot of pieces that have to come together on that, but again, we're not committing to that. The whole thing right now, we'll continue to explore that from a feasibility standpoint. But the stormwater improvements are needed regardless on Perry Street. And that's something we'll be moving forward with regardless of the existence of the parking lot. But it's very important we know that if this is something that could be approved in the future, that we take that into account.
So does the board feel comfortable making a motion with it tonight, or you feel more comfortable waiting at another time?
It's exploratory, so I'm good.
Huh?
I'm good.
Yeah, good. So what kind of motion you want to move us?
Does this have a name?
Yes. Rolesville downtown.
This is Rolesville downtown parking improvements.
Motion move forward with the plan from the town engineer for exploring the development of the Bolton and Mank Rolesville downtown parking improvements project. Something along those.
So moved. Yeah.
I was going to say, can we just say so moved?
Second.
Yeah, you're not authorizing the budget yet.
Correct, sir. Correct.
Exploratory.
So move.
Good. So I got, who made the motion? Who finally made? Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. Ayes do have it. Motion approved. Thank you. And what, you'll make the motion on the cost when it gets to that.
It's coming out of your pocket.
Yeah, right. You know what, Mr. Mayor, I accept.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I told we get out here for 9:30, running a little bit late. So unless I hear opposition from someone, not hearing any, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.